Chapter 8 of The Mystery of Edwin Drood. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Chant. The Mystery of Edwin Drood. The unfinished novel by Charles Dickens. Chapter 8. Daggers Drawn. The two young men, having seen the damsels their charges enter the courtyard of the nun's house, and finding themselves coldly stared at by the brazen door-plate, as if the battered old beau with the glass in his eye were insolent, look at one another, look along the perspective of the moonlit street, and slowly walk away together. "Do you stay here long, Mr. Drood?" says Neville.
"Not this time," is the careless answer. "I leave for London again to-morrow, but I shall be here on and off until next midsummer. Then I shall take my leave of Cloisterham, and England too, for many a long day, I expect."
"Are you going abroad?"
"Going to wake up Egypt a little,"
is the condescending reply. "Are you reading?"
"Reading?"
repeats Edwin Drood with a touch of contempt.
"No, doing, working, engineering. My small patrimony was left a part of the capital of the firm I am with, by my father, a former partner, and I am a charge upon the firm until I come of age, and then I step into my modest share in the concern. Jack, you met him at dinner, is, until then, my guardian and trustee."
"I heard from Mr. Crisparkle of your other good fortune."
"What do you mean by my other good fortune?"
Neville has made his remark in a watchfully advancing and yet furtive and shy manner, very expressive of that peculiar air already noticed of being at once hunter and hunted. Edwin has made his retort with an abruptness not at all polite. They stop and interchange a rather heated look. "I hope," says Neville, "that there is no offence, Mr. Drood, in my innocently referring to your betrothal."
"By George!"
cries Edwin, leading on again in a somewhat quicker pace,
"everybody in this chattering old Cloisterham refers to it. I wonder no public house has been set up with my portrait for the sign of the betrothed's head, or Pussy's portrait, or one or the other."
"I am not accountable for Mr. Crisparkle mentioning the matter to me, quite openly," Neville begins.
"No, that's true, you are not," Edwin Drood assents.
"But," resumes Neville, "I am accountable for mentioning it to you, and I did so on the supposition that you could not fail to be highly proud of it." Now there are these two curious touches of human nature working the secret springs of this dialogue. Neville Landless is already enough impressed by little Rosebud to feel indignant that Edwin Drood, far below her, should hold his prize so lightly. Edwin Drood is already enough impressed by Helena to feel indignant that Helena's brother, far below her, should dispose of him so coolly, and put him out of the way so entirely. However, the last remark had better be answered. So says Edwin,
"I don't know, Mr. Neville,"
adopting that mode of address from Mr. Crisparkle,
"that what people are proudest of they usually talk most about. I don't know either that what they are proudest of they most like other people to talk about. But I live a busy life, and I speak under correction by you readers, who ought to know everything, and I dare say do." By this time they had both become savage. Mr. Neville out in the open, Edwin Drood under the transparent cover of a popular tune, and a stop now and then to pretend to admire picturesque effects in the moonlight before him. "It does not seem to me very civil in you," remarks Neville at length,
to reflect upon a stranger who comes here not having had your advantages, to try to make up for lost time. But to be sure I was not brought up in busy life, and my ideas of civility were formed among heathens."
"Perhaps the best civility, whatever kind of people we are brought up among," retorts Edwin Drood, "is to mind our own business. If you will set me that example, I promise to follow it."
"Do you know that you take a great deal too much upon yourself?" is the angry rejoinder. "And in that part of the world I come from, you would be called to account for it."
"By whom, for instance?"
asks Edwin Drood, coming to a halt, and surveying the other with a look of disdain. But here a startling right hand is laid on Edwin's shoulder, and Jasper stands between them. For it would seem that he, too, has strolled round by the Nun's House, and has come up behind them on the shadowy side of the road.
"Ned, Ned, Ned," he says, "we must have no more of this. I don't like this. I have overheard high words between you two. Remember, my dear boy, you are almost in the position of host tonight. You belong, as it were, to the place, and in a manner represent it towards a stranger. Mr. Neville is a stranger, and you should respect the obligations of hospitality. And Mr. Neville," laying his left hand on the inner shoulder of that young gentleman, and thus walking on between them, hand to shoulder on either side, "you will pardon me, but I appeal to you to govern your temper too. Now, what is amiss? But why ask? Let there be nothing amiss, and the question is superfluous. We are all three on a good understanding, are we not?"
After a silent struggle between the two young men who shall speak last, Edwin Drood strikes in with, "So far as I am concerned, Jack, there is no anger in me."
"Nor in me," says Neville Landless, though not so freely, or perhaps so carelessly.
"But if Mr. Drood knew all that lies behind me, far away from here, he might know better how it is that sharp-edged words have sharp edges to wound me."
"Perhaps," says Jasper, in a soothing manner, "we had better not say anything having the appearance of a remonstrance or condition. It might not seem generous. Frankly and freely, you see there is no anger in Ned. Frankly and freely, there is no anger in you, Mr. Neville."
"None at all, Mr. Jasper."
Still not quite so frankly or so freely, or, be it said once again, not quite so carelessly, perhaps.
"All over, then. Now, my bachelor gatehouse is a few yards from here, and the heater is on the fire, and the wine and glasses are on the table, and it is not a stone's throw from Minor Canon Corner. Ned, you are up and away to-morrow. We will carry Mr. Neville in with us, and take a stirrup cup."
"With all my heart, Jack."
"And with all mine, Mr. Jasper."
Neville finds it impossible to say less, but would rather not go. He has an impression upon him that he has lost hold of his temper, feels that Edwin Drood's coolness, so far from being infectious, makes him red hot. Mr. Jasper, still walking in the centre, hand to shoulder on either side, beautifully turns the refrain of a drinking song, and they all go up to his rooms. There, the first object visible, when he adds the light of a lamp to that of the fire, is the portrait over the chimney-piece. It is not an object calculated to improve the understanding between the two young men, as rather awkwardly reviving the subject of their difference. Accordingly, they both glance at it consciously, but say nothing. Jasper, however, who would appear from his conduct to have gained but an imperfect clue to the cause of their late high words, directly calls attention to it. "You recognise that picture, Mr.